Fani Willis, her plea deals, which were supposed to be justice served because people like Sidney Powell took guilty pleas, which we know were ultimately just diversion deals, which will ultimately be dismissed anyways. But they told us that Fani secured victories. Why? Because she got apology letters. And those apology letters were going to be used in trial against Trump. Remember, they said they're going to come in and testify, and they're going to explain that Trump is guilty, and their apology letters are going to be robust, and Fani got everything that she wanted out of them. Remember that? We were mocking that because we said, why did she give them diversion deals then? Okay, they actually are not going to be convicted of anything. Yes, they took a guilty plea proceeding, but the judge held that in abeyance pending probation, at which point all of it's going to be dismissed in about 3 years. So she got nothing out of this. They said that these apology letters were going to be a home run, but guess what? Not. Here is what they look like. It is a 1-sentence apology letter. That one's from Sidney Powell. Now we're going to compare and contrast that to Jenna Ellis, who kind of made a big show about this when she stood up and read her letter, but didn't have to do that. The others in their cases certainly didn't. So we're going to go through the story. Fani's going to explain the strength of her case. She was on a podcast and she's like, well, I'd rather not talk about it. It's like any other case. And I understand why she doesn't want to talk about it because they don't have anything. And we'll look at some reaction from people like Kristol, that woman, and then Psaki, who's paranoid that they're going to turn off the internet or something. So this is the back end of what we did not see when the plea deals were being executed. This was the apology letter from Kenneth Chesebro, a man who took a guilty plea proceeding, who took a diversion deal in Georgia, which means his case is going to be dismissed. And they go through the proceeding in case he doesn't complete probation or he gets in trouble again. If he does get in trouble again, they're going to bring back the guilty plea and enter the charge against him and convict him. But that's not going to happen. He's going to be fine. It's all going to be dismissed, and there will not even be a record of the charge. So what happened in this case is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution submitted a records request, and we can see why Fani didn't want to release these things. Because they're one sentence, two of them. Kenneth Chesebro, October 20th, when he's taking his plea, this is what he said. And the left was so excited about this. He apologized. Here's his apology. I apologize to the citizens of the state of Georgia and of Fulton County for my involvement in count 15 of the indictment. Kenneth Chesebro. I felt it, man. I really felt it. I'm moved. I can feel the sincerity in this. It really landed with me. And I can't wait until Fani takes this in front of the jurors for Trump. And she says, well, they're all upset about this. Does count 15 even involve Trump? I don't know. I would guess not. So that's his apology letter. All right. Nothing in there. Now that is pretty good. Now let's count the words on this one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We'll count 15 as a word. So this is 22 words. Now I haven't done the math on this. Now let's see if Sidney Powell can beat that. All right. Let's see if she can do better. Let's see. So this is Sidney Powell's. Oh, I think she has it beat. What do you think? 22 words for Kenneth Chesebro. All right. Let's see what Sidney did. So this is Sidney Powell, October 19th. She says, Sidney Powell, very sincere. Okay. Get out the Kleenex. I apologize for my actions in connection with the events in Coffee County. I don't know how many that is. I don't know. I think she definitely, it felt like a win to me. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wow, man. 13. Is it 13? I think it's 13 words. Oh my gosh. I gotta count that again. I got too excited. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 words. Oh my gosh. It's incredible. So Sidney Powell, man, she's a good lawyer, as we saw, man. She's really good at this stuff, as we saw. So that's pretty amazing. Now, I got to tell you, that's pretty good. Now, I don't know what I would say. You know what I would see? I got a couple options. Okay. I would see if I could get away with like this, like, I'm sorry. And then I'd see like if Fani would take that and then just leave it at that. I'm sorry. And then if she would take that, I'd say, you know what? Let's just try this one. Let's just try this. Let's just see if she'll take this. Just put that on a sticky note and send that over there. I think that I would try that one. Sorry. And just see if she'll take it. I don't know. You know, that's getting pretty bravado there. I got to say, Sidney Powell's pretty safe. It's a good, fair 13 words is a nice victory for her. They said that they were going to take all these, like they're going to take this in front of the judge, right? In front of the jurors, and the jurors are going to see all this. And so that's Sidney Powell, one of the main architects. Now, to be fair to Fani, this one's a little bit longer. Not going to count this one, but this was Scott Hall. Now, Scott Hall, I think, was the first one through the gate. Okay. Scott Hall was the first one who took a plea deal. And then everybody else was like, wait, you gave him a diversion deal with a stupid apology letter? Okay. So he's the first one. So I don't think think he really knew that you could write a one sentence. Like, I don't think he knew that option, and he didn't date this, but yeah, I owe you an apology. I wish, let's see if he implicates Trump, okay? Because they said he's going to, oh, this is going to be used to implicate Trump. That's why Fani's so brilliant. She's so smart. You're so dumb, Rob. To the citizens of Georgia, I owe you an apology. Wish I'd never involved myself in post-election activities that brought me to this court. I've never been in trouble with the law. I meant no harm to anyone. So that's not really kind of, apology language. Now, I did what I did on my own. Oh, there you go. So Trump is not even involved at all. I was not acting on behalf of any organization or any other person or persons. Wow. So are you saying that what you're saying is there's no conspiracy? There's no conspiracy. Wow. So your apology letter, because you didn't plead guilty to conspiracy. In fact, you didn't plead guilty to anything. You went through a guilty plea proceeding there, Scott. A guilty plea proceeding, which is going to be held in abeyance when your case gets dismissed, which will be later down the line. And in your apology letter, you exonerate Donald Trump. So thanks for that, because there is no RICO case. There is no conspiracy. I did what I did on my own. So thank you for that. Now you can see why Fani does not want any of this coming out. So it's actually the opposite of what all the lefties were claiming. Okay. They were saying she got everything she wanted. He's actually exonerating them. Now, I became involved when I observed what I thought were some irregularities, which I reported to law enforcement. I was concerned. I went to the State Farm Arena on election night to the subsequent recounts as an observer and was ultimately invited to Coffee County. Although I certainly did not mean to violate any laws, I now realize that I did and have accepted responsibility for my actions. I offer my sincere apology to the citizens of the state of Georgia. Incredible! So the first two letters are like, get bent, here's your stinking apology, losers. And then this is like a total slam dunk for Trump. It actually supports Trump and blasts the rest of the RICO case. Like, there is no RICO case. No, I did what I did on my own. This is ridiculous. I was invited there, didn't even intend to violate the law, but I accepted responsibility because you guys are partisan prosecutor hacks and you made me do it. But sorry, George, like, that's true, by the way. I don't think any of these guys wanted to violate the law. And if they did technically violate it in some way, shape, or form, I'm not saying that they did, but like, yeah, okay, like, you can apologize for that. I didn't realize that I was going to be attacked and weaponized for doing what everyone else has done, but they found a law, and I don't want to violate the law. I want to be a law-abiding citizen. This is like a home run from Scott. I actually think this is also a great strategy. So rather than even writing just, a one-worder, so from going from a 22-word to a 13-word, maybe to a 2 or a 3-word plus a contraction, that's really a 3-word. I got sneaky with that one. That's a contraction. So it's really like a 3 words boiled down into a 2. See if Fani would accept that. But my point is, this is also brilliant, right? You could also just write like, 10 pages of this. Hey, Fani, here's why you're a loser. I'm sorry you're a loser. How's that? You take that for an apology? I'm sorry you're a partisan hack prosecutor who's wrecking America. That's what I'm sorry for. Signed, Scott Hall. That'd be pretty good. All right. So a lot of options here. Really, you can do whatever you want in Fani's courtroom. She's got no case, so nobody cares. So she's just like, yeah, I'll take it. Now, for some reason, Jenna Ellis didn't get the memo that there's a better way to do this. And so she, if you recall, we were covering this here. She did this. This was her approach. And I'm not sure why, because all the other three had a little bit different turnout, a little bit of a different outcome. But here was Jenna.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those failures of mine, Your Honor, I have taken responsibility already before the Colorado bar who censured me, and I now take responsibility before this court and apologize to the people of Georgia. Thank you.
All right, so a little bit of an emotional layer that she added on there, and okay, but the letter doesn't say anything. It doesn't, indicate that there's anything wrong that Trump did wrong. It's a pretty vanilla letter, and she just is blaming bad information that came to her. Okay, it still doesn't implicate anybody, so it's a little bit more theatrical. The others, Sidney Powell's approach was good. I'm sorry for your inconvenience. Bye. Have a nice day, Fani. So that's Jenna, right? That's the three. That's what we've got. We've got all three of those knocked out, and so Fani is not doing so hot in this case. Now, she did show up on a podcast. Now, this podcast was breaking down the Trump indictment, and they brought Fani on, and let's see what this sounds like. from this podcast.
I guess the sticky notes worked out okay. Case is about 4 months old. I guess we want to know how it's gone so far.
I think I'm assuming you're talking about the election interference case, because that's the case you asked me about before. I think it's going like normal cases in the system.
How do you feel about the strength of your case at this point?
Bring indictments when I am confident in the evidence we bring. And so I'm at the same place I was on the day we indicted.
Okay.
And I think probably more so than maybe national viewers, that when I took office, I changed the philosophy of the way we charge cases in this office. And so it's very important to me that any case, whether it's a theft by shoplifting or possession of drugs or murder or some white collar crime, we get all of the evidence together. And once we are satisfied with we have enough evidence, we bring charges. And so that is followed on every single case in this office. I thought it was an unethical practice to charge people by police just faxing over a paragraph, and then based on that, you bring charges. You put a lot of people in a bad position where they have the scarlet letter of an indictment. You really didn't have good evidence because you didn't do the research. Thought it was bad for the people that were charged as well as victims, because you don't do a good job of making sure that you have a strong case.
General charging policy. Like, what about
There's nothing
Trump
unique
and the Trump
about
case?
any case in this office. The process is the same every time.
Well,
not every case started out with 19 defendants, though.
She doesn't like it.
That's some big number to everybody else in the universe. It's not that big to me. APS was 35. I got a couple of 28. I don't even know why it's exciting to people.
I've done this
Here,
before.
Willis is talking about the Atlanta Public Schools test cheating case.
Okay, so you heard that. That's a little intro. Now we're going to fast forward through this next segment because they get back to the Trump stuff, but they're like, okay, she doesn't want to talk about this. So they fast forward through this.
I guess personally, I just remember being very tired. America, nor reporters, you all really do not believe fundamentally, because if you did, it wouldn't be so interesting, that everyone is the same. So the process is always the same. And so why is that news that it's, and clearly it is. It's not a criticism of you because people comment on it, but it shouldn't be news that any defendant has to go through the process. So it wasn't anything special to me. I've seen a lot of bookend photos in my day. It's another bookend photo from somebody charged with a crime.
So as you can see, Willis was pretty brief in her answers and repeated again and again that the Trump case is just like any other case her office handles.
And what has this done for your life personally? I know that you've testified a lot about the...
So they brought her on. They're like, hey, can we talk to you about the most interesting thing ever? And she's like, what are you talking about? It's boring, okay? It's just Trump. Don't ask me about anything. Even they have to note it. Like, oh, this kind of sucks.
The personal threats you've received, but can you reflect a little bit on that and how it's changed your life and maybe your own personal sense of security walking through the world?
We have a lot of people that are mentally ill in the world. It's clear to me that people are offended when everyone is treated equally. And so as a result, I have a lot of ignorant, probably mentally ill people that lodge threats at me and my family. That's obviously no one wants to have themselves threatened or their families threatened. So I take proper precautions, none of which I'll discuss because I wouldn't want my safety or my family's safety to be jeopardized by discussing them. It is a shame, though, that we are at a time in Americans' history where if someone doesn't like a decision, that they think that it's appropriate to call them racist names, which I've definitely been called.
Fani? Your name is Fani. I don't know what you're talking about.
Everything from a slave whore to the N-word more times than I can count. There's usually
that's not what we use,
ugly racial identifications like you're going to be hung or you'll be raped and hung.
No, see, stuff like that is criminal, by the way. So she's a prosecutor. She knows this. She knows better than this. You're not allowed to make those types of threats to government officials. In fact, you're not allowed to make those threats to anybody. It's called harassment. It's called threatening. Okay, and that's criminalized in various permutations all around the country. So it's already illegal to do that. They're already investigating and arresting people who are doing those things, but they're trying to say that that type of stuff that happens all the time. Okay, like this is a big country. There's a law of big numbers. If you have 100 million people, let's say a third of the country who hear about something, someone's going to have a reaction to it and probably do something that's not really great, right? Whether it's a phone call or a text message or something, right? It's just a big country. It's just the law of numbers. It's just probabilities, essentially. But they take these little incidents and they say, now everybody's attacking me and they're attacking my case and I'm a victim. And so rather than defending the case, they just layer over it, like they blanket over it with all of their personal attacks that somehow makes their case stronger. So here's Fani.
Things to bring terror, but I've said it before and I'll say it again, they're wasting their time.
And then we had a few exchanges like this one. You've gotten 4 plea agreements so far.
So, I'll let you ask your full question because, I don't want to be rude to you, but I'm not going to comment on any open case in terms of plea agreements or...
They're closed. They're closed, Fani. They're done.
Defendants from standing. But I'll let you ask your question and then I'll say that.
So what the hell did you come to our studio for here, Willis?
I guess I was going to ask how important was it to get those plea agreements and how important is that to your case going forward?
This guy's on his heels. He's like, holy crap, what's her problem here, man? I'm like, this is an interview. You want to answer questions?
I won't discuss any open case. I can just talk about process. And I think you've probably heard it before. And you, I know, are someone who is an actual experienced journalist and experienced with the courtroom and the way criminal cases proceed. Again, not a unique fact. In APS, we started with 35 defendants. 2 of those unfortunately passed, meaning they died, which left 33 defendants remaining.
In your jail?
21 took pleas. We used each of those pleas to tell further the accounts of what happened in that incident. Plea agreements in the criminal practice, you often give them because someone wants to take responsibility for what they did. That's why you'll give someone a lesser sentence, because it's an important part is to just have attrition and say, I apologize, I shouldn't have been involved in this conduct. And it often helps you in making sure that you're able to prove your case, although you should do that at the time of indictment, whether you have a plea or not.
Do you think it'll take having a trial date on the calendar before you're going to get some of these people to agree to these deals?
So Fulton County, I've learned, I've practiced almost my entire career here, is unique from other circuits in that that's not the way our process kind of works. So you bring an indictment. Typically, there's a plea and arraignment where people just say that they're not guilty for the charges. That's a court date. They call it a plea and arraignment court date. Motions are filed in big cases. Lots and lots and lots of motions are filed by many different defendants. And so you have motions hearings. The reason I mention that is often, and before you can have motions, you have to file the discovery, which is all the information you have on the case. So people know what motions they want to file, what evidence they want to challenge. What has been my practice, what I have seen in my practice for these 28 years that I've been practicing law and criminal law, is that typically it is after motions when you'll get the most amount of pleas. And so what happens after motions in Fulton County, Georgia, and that's all I can speak to, is we have what we call a final plea date. Most judges in Fulton County will use final plea date for your last opportunity for a negotiated plea. There's a great significance to a negotiated plea, and that is because if we agree to what the sentence is going to be, and you as the defendant, the judge can always say, I'm not going to accept that negotiated plea. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think that's justice. And so a judge can reject it. If a judge rejects it, anytime up to and including final plea, the defendant can say, well, since you didn't accept the plea that I negotiated, then I'm going to go ahead to trial. One is able to take a plea after final plea, but they have to take what's called a non-negotiated plea, which means the judge sentences. And the second important part about that is you do not have the right to withdraw your plea. So you're stuck with it.
Thanks, Fani.
So whatever the judge gave you, that's what you're going to do. If that's 20 years in jail, then you're going to do 20 years in jail because you're past the date of final plea. And so I never really expect pleas in a lot of an amount. We certainly had them in APS too, but you're always just in practicing law going to see more pleas after motions. And it makes sense because now I know what's coming in against me and what's not coming in against me. Now lawyers are in a position where they can really tell their client, okay, you might want to take a plea. The easiest example for lay people to understand is in a drug case. So sometimes you'll have a motion to suppress the drugs that were found.
All right, this is interesting. Now, I don't necessarily agree with her. So sometimes what happens, at least here in Arizona, is you have a trial tax, okay? The farther you take the case, the further you push the issues. Like if you file a motion to suppress, they'll actually make your plea deal get worse, okay? So are incentivized to plea out early rather than later. So, oftentimes, if her office doesn't do this, shout out to her, by the way. I prefer that. We should get all of the evidence and we should get all of the discovery. But in many situations, the prosecutor will actually penalize you. It's like, do you think, for example, that the Proud Boys would have gotten the same penalty if they had taken a plea? Of course not. Do you think that they would have gotten the same sentence if they had taken a plea? Of course not. They would have gotten, a fraction of the time. So is that justice then? They went to trial and challenged the charges. So is it justice that they go to jail longer than would have been acceptable for them under a plea? Should it be triple, quadruple what the penalty was, the original charge? They were willing to put these guys in prison for 5 years. Why is 25 years appropriate now all of a sudden? Because there's more charges there and they went to trial. So the penalty just suddenly needs to be much worse. It's a trial tax. And so I think that probably happens in here. It's just all prosecutors. And even if it's not a written policy, as it was here in Arizona for a very long time, then maybe they just do it, impliedly, right? Which I think that they do, because you're making the prosecutor work. You're making them respond to a motion to suppress. You're making them set up and schedule interviews with you. Oh gosh, all right, my plea is revoked. Take the plea or not.
And lawyers will wait for their clients to take a plea until they know, is the judge going to say this search was legal or this search was illegal? If it's illegal, all the drugs are out. Prosecution is in a position where we are going to probably dismiss the case because we can't use the evidence against you. Or the judge is going to say, yeah, them 3 kilos, they're going to come in and the search was good. And then they're going to say, hey, what's the best deal that we can get? So we are kind of in the normal place of the process. And so I'm not at all surprised about where we are or how many pleas have been taken in that case. I think we're following the normal course.
We saw you for the first time in court in revocation hearing for Harrison Floyd. And I guess I'm just wondering if we're going to see you in court more often in this case.
Ask her why she lost.
So just to correct the record, when we were in a pre-indictment stage in this case, I did appear in court.
Right.
But you're speaking post-indictment. I told somebody recently, and I think it's true, and you'll probably appreciate this more than other reporters, I don't think anyone should ever be surprised if DA Willis enters a courtroom. That's like not something that should surprise you. And so
I agree.
That's not a straight answer, I guess, but I don't think anyone should be surprised if I walk into the court to defend any case that I have here.
Your name's on the indictment.
My name's on every indictment. And so ultimately, my assistant district attorneys are carrying out my duties and responsibilities.
Do you think it's possible you might get an appearance at trial whenever the trial comes?
I think it's very possible.
Yeah, you better,
that hearing
Fani.
with Harrison Floyd, it seemed, involving, threats against witnesses, it seemed almost personal for you. Do you feel a heightened level of responsibility when it comes to the safety of some of these witnesses?
And are you mad that you lost?
Oh, I feel a heightened sense of security when it comes to my witnesses in all cases. I would not say it's personal, but it is at the front of my mind in terms of business. This is not the only case by any stretch of the imagination where we very much worry about threats. That kind of goes back to our first part of our conversation. We are living in a time in America where there is a lack of respect for authority and there's a lack of respect for the process. That hit home the largest for me.
You better believe it. There is. Yeah, your authority. You guys have made a joke of the justice system. That's your own doing. Why did you try to indict and prosecute your partisan opponents? I mean, that's obviously insane. So yes, you've made a joke of the system yourself, and we're going to call you out for it. And we'll see how much authority you think you have and how this whole thing goes, because it is slowly unraveling before us. You have one sentence apologies.
Earlier in maybe last year now, someone threatened our sheriff. And that seemed crazy to me.
That's
because
a crime.
Your sheriff in any county is your most important law enforcement officer, right? You're your chief number one law enforcement officer. But to me, the reason I bring that up is it just shows what a horrible place we are at when people think it is okay to threaten law enforcement officers who risk their life to protect you. And so, yes, I take it very, very seriously when people get doxxed, which this week in a trial, not the one you're referring to right now, I've had law enforcement officers doxxed.
Oh, so not the Trump one? Great. What are you guys doing about that? You melting down about that one? You're going to gag everybody in those cases?
Personally, as you know, have been doxxed, which for your listeners and viewers who don't know what that means, it means where someone will share your personal information, meaning your home address or your business or your telephone number, so that people can intentionally harass you. And that's been done in cases that this office is bringing, in cases the Attorney General is currently bringing against different law enforcement officers here, against city council people in my city about another case. So yes, I think you can hear the passion in my voice when people threaten people that are just coming forward, being good citizens, doing their duties. It is a very important thing to me, and it's something we are not going to tolerate.
Okay.
Speaking of threats or perceived threats against witnesses in this case, we had one of the defendants, Trevian Cootie, go on Instagram Live recently and talk about Ruby Freeman, one of the witnesses in this case. There were some legal folks I spoke to who said that it was grounds for you to seek a revocation of Ms. Cootie's bond agreement. Do you plan to do that in the future, and why haven't we seen action on the DA's part yet?
Because she lost the last one, okay? She tried to revoke Harrison Floyd's bond and failed massively. Because the first thing you got to do is have a protective order that is actually specific so that Floyd has notice. Now, did she have the same protective order issued against her? She says she's patient. All right.
Office has requested an August 5th trial date for next year. We have the special counsel in the DC case going to the Supreme Court right now asking for expedited review. It's possible that case could be delayed. It's possible. It's possible the New York case could be delayed for some reason, and the classified documents. If there is an opening before August the 5th, do you think you would be ready and willing to step forward here?
Oh, we would be ready and willing. I always say, if stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So the state would be ready and willing, but we have to go through that natural process that we've talked about of hearing all of the defense motions, hearing all of the state's motions, having final plea. But the date that we asked for was respectful of our sister jurisdictions. And so we considered that those dates were already set. And so I wasn't going to go in and ask for the same date that was set in another jurisdiction. But, I am aware that there are things going on elsewhere in the world that could delay this. But certainly, as you said, there might be openings, and it would just depend on where we were in the process, meaning had we gone through all of those other necessary steps. We have a new judge in this case, and I think he's been criticized for being a new judge. But what I watch him do, not in this case, just in all cases, seems to be managing his calendar very, very efficiently.
Yeah, he's
having dates, holding people accountable. He's jumping in and trying cases. And so I think that's lucky. Not every judge is that efficient. And so I think it's lucky for all the parties involved that you have a judge that moves their calendar along efficiently. And I'm sure if he sees an opening and he's made sure that everyone's rights are protected and we've done all the motions, that it's something he may set down. But obviously,
I'm not sure if that's true or not. August dates in the middle of an election season. Give me a break. Okay, so that's Fani. Now, I'm sure she continues to talk on, but we can only tolerate so much. So she has an interesting take on some of these issues, really doesn't want to comment on it. It is the standard sequence of criminal prosecutions. As far as she can tell, they're still pushing for an August trial date. She doesn't have much comments on the prior plea deals. We think that they were a joke since she doesn't have any actual convictions. And this is what the actual apology looks like, a one-sentencer, and then a defense of actions by Mr. Scott Hall. And so we've got some questions now about these other cases. Fani got asked about SCOTUS and Jack Smith and moving those trial dates around. We know that Jack Smith is appealing directly to the Supreme Court to see whether they will find that Trump has, or in Jack Smith's opinion, does not have presidential immunity, or claims that the cases should be dismissed based on double jeopardy and other things. This is Bill Kristol saying that, SCOTUS isn't going to save us. We're so petrified against Donald Trump that we've been relying on somebody to take him out. Jack Smith filed 2. Fanny's got 1. Bragg's got 1. Miss Bergdorf Carroll is civilly suing him. Tishy's taking away his business attemptedly. And Kristol is getting a little bit nervous about this. Here's what he sounds like.
So I think the courts likely reject Trump's immunity claims. If they take them, he's kind of off the hook for at least federal criminal indictments and charges. But this probably delays, I was talking to lawyers yesterday, by a month or two, the actual trial going ahead, even if the Supreme Court ultimately rejects Trump's claims, just because the judge has paused the depositions and discovery in the trial, as I think she probably has to while this thing is on appeal. So I think the notion that we're going to have a trial beginning March 4th looks less likely. Maybe April, maybe May. I don't know. Will the trial even, at that point, does Trump say, hey, we're in the middle of the presidential campaign. I'm the nominee, basically.
Yeah.
We'll be the nominee of the Republican Party.
You're going to have a trial?
We can't have a 2-month trial here. It's not fair. And let's just put it off till after the election. So I am much more, I'm anti-Trump, just to put all my cards on the table here.
We know that.
I've been always more skeptical than a lot of my friends that the court system would save us, so to speak, from Trump. And those voters who say they don't want to vote for a convicted felon, I think they're being sincere. We'll see if that changes in the course of the next few months. But I'm not sure that have to. So I'm sort of doubtful that he will have a trial and out of which he'll be convicted.
Oh, so they are starting to recognize the truth on these things. And did you like how he said that the judicial system is not going to save them from Trump? It's like, what are you talking about? What kind of country are you living in that the judicial system should have any say in who governs the country, right? They are neutral judges, but they are using, right, the courts as political tools. And Bill Kristol's in on it. I thought he was a Republican like a long time ago or something like that. Weird how the tides change. So that's Kristol. This woman was over on MSNBC, and she is very happy with how these cases are going. She says, I think that what Jack Smith is doing is pretty brilliant. Says you can read more about it on their website, but here is MSNBC's analysis on how this works.
Because I think Jack Smith filing actually was pretty brilliant. His strategy has been really brilliant to try to cut Donald Trump off from this delay strategy. This is what Public Notice wrote about it. Trump's lawyers insist that the Constitution's Take Care Clause made Trump an all-purpose policeman obliged to interfere with the certification of President Biden's electoral victory. This is a particularly odd position because the 12th Amendment to the Constitution lays out specific roles for Congress and the vice president in the electoral certification, but not for the president. So talk about this just for a moment, because it is slightly unusual for the Supreme Court to skip the D.C. circuit and just jump before them. But it's not completely unusual, right? And is this a solid argument on the part of Trump's lawyers that somehow interfering with the election is part of his job?
Right. So we're pivoting from the Fisher case, which is about the January 6th charges, and now turning to Trump's efforts to delay this trial altogether by arguing that he is immune from prosecution as a former president. What Jack Smith has done here is basically said, we can't wait for the Intermediate Appellate Court to make a ruling here. That would take too long. This country needs to know whether one of its candidates.
So this woman's name is Melissa Murray, and she wrote a book called The Trump Indictments, the Historic Charging Documents with Commentary. She wrote a book with Andrew Weissman with commentary. They wrote a whole book about the indictment. Oh Oh man, I'm sure the MSNBC viewers are just reading it. Probably it's, like on their tables, when they say their prayers before dinner or whatever. So the Trump indictments, the historic charging documents with commentary from Melissa and Andrew. Here you go.
For president is a convicted felon or not. And so it is certiorari without judgment, before judgment in this case. And it's asked the Supreme Court to not only do that, to take this case, but to do so with incredible expedition. And the question that the court has to address is whether the scope of presidential immunity, which has never been applied in the context of a criminal case, because we have never had a former president or a sitting president be indicted on criminal charges.
No,
but
we haven't.
Whether or not the scope of presidential immunity goes so far as to insulate a president from criminal charges. And Donald Trump is arguing that his discouragement of the counting of the votes or the certification of the votes in Congress, that was merely part of his job as president and therefore within the scope, within that outer perimeter of his duties, and therefore renders him immune. Jack Smith is arguing that he wasn't even supposed to be there. That is a job for the vice president. Right. This is not part of the president's official duties. He has no immunity here.
So if she's right about that, there's good analysis there. I think that her analysis is accurate. It's funny that they're grifting off the indictment. They wrote a whole book about it, and it's, incredible. But anyways, so I think that she's right? Jack Smith is trying to leapfrog. He is trying to go very quickly. They got a little caught flat-footed on this thing. They thought that Chutkan was going to be able to anchor that March 4th trial date in there. And then boom, that Coinbase case came out 2023. They hit this thing on immunity, double jeopardy. They took the case away from her. So then Jack Smith freaked out, hit Judge Chutkan with a motion, hit the Court of Appeals with a motion, and hit the Supreme Court with the motion, all within like 48 hours. Boom, or within the same day, I think. Pop, pop, pop. Oh crap, we don't have this case anymore. We're in big trouble. So I don't think Jack Smith is, this brilliant legal scholar at all. Saying that this is their strategy, it's brilliant, whatever. I think we'll see what SCOTUS does about it, but that is their analysis. Now, meanwhile, we know what a danger Trump is, because elsewhere on MSNBC, there's a show called Inside Jen Psaki. It's one of their hit shows, and she is telling us about some other threats that Trump might bring down upon us. Brought this guy on, Miles Taylor. He is a national security official X, and he's host of some TV show. Now, if elected, he says that Trump may turn off the internet. Should be a big problem here. We won't be able to live stream.
Liz Cheney's been talking about that I am also obsessed with is kind of what damage he could do within government without even necessarily breaking the law. Like how he could use the levers of government to bend to his will. You've worked in government. What scares you the most?
Well, the possibilities are almost limitless. And I spent nearly 2 years asking that question to people. And I wrote it in this book, Blowback, but to try to paint that picture, to try to understand what he would actually do by talking to all of my former colleagues at different departments and agencies under Trump and asking them that question. What will happen in a second term? The biggest concerns for me are on the national security side. I think Americans still don't understand the full extent of the president's powers and things Donald Trump could do, bubble wrapped in legalese, that would be damaging to the republic. And one of those that I've noted is there's something in the White House called the Doomsday Book. And for the first time, DHS gave authorization for me to mention this publicly. And the fact that there are...
DHS gave you permission to talk about this publicly? Why is the DHS giving you permission to talk about propaganda garbage adverse to Trump on the national airwaves? All right, who is this dude? Former Chief of Staff, Homeland Security Department. He's not with the government anymore. So they're telling him that he can go out there and he can talk about this with Trump? What?
Full extent of the president's powers and things Donald Trump could do, bubble wrapped in legalese, that would be damaging to the republic. And one of those that I've noted is there's something in the White House called the Doomsday Book. And for the first time, DHS gave authorization for me to mention this publicly.
That's convenient.
And the fact that there are concerns that that book, which is supposed to be used to protect the country in instances of armed foreign invasion or rebellion, it's the president's most extraordinary powers, could be picked up by Trump and used for domestic political purposes. He could invoke powers we've never heard a president of the United States invoke, potentially to shut down companies.
Do you mean like prosecuting your political opponents in this country, like through the DOJ? Do you mean like that? We've never seen that before. Do you mean something like that? I mean, it never happened 234 years of American history. Is that what you're talking about, my man?
Or turn off the internet or deploy the U.S. military on U.S. soil. We don't know because, the things that are in there, the emergency powers of the president, aren't widely known to the American people. So that's a big worry for people like me and others about what he could do. But that weaponization of the government could extend across the interagency to places where we haven't seen it before. The Department of Education, the Department of Veterans Affairs, ways to wield that power and those budgets to help his allies and to hurt his enemies. And to be clear, those aren't just elites. To Donald Trump, his enemies include people who live in blue states. I remember him not wanting to deliver emergency aid to blue states because he didn't like them, because they didn't like him.
I mean, Miles, the doomsday book, I think it's safe to say we don't want in Donald Trump's hands. Anthony, one of the...
No, Joe Biden's hands are much better. But my gosh, can you believe what they're doing over there on MSNBC? If you're a viewer, what are you watching there? Like, do you think you're going to die 24/7 all the time if you watch this channel? It's like, what is happening? You're going to, double mask and all the things, go get all the things, or else you'll die. Trump will kill you. Trump is going to take away the Constitution, turn off the internet, doomsday device. It's like, man, these people's cortisol levels have to just be through the roof. So you almost feel bad for them. It's like, are you addicted to this type of dopamine hit? Or is this their engagement platform? Or are they going to do something with the internet and then blame Trump on it? Trump people take out the internet, MAGA insurrectionists insurrect the internet, something like that, right? I don't know. Be mindful of those comments. Imagine this guy is not just selling books. Let me just leave it at that. Not just selling books. Probably an ulterior agenda there as well. So, my friends, that is Fani's plea deal. Okay, they're panicked about this. She's got no case. They don't think SCOTUS is going to be able to save them. They think that Jack Smith's brilliant when it doesn't look like it. And Trump's going to turn the internet off. So, of course, we're going to be here continuing to cover Fani's case and Tishy's case and Jackie Deranged Thug Smith's case as well. And so thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, my friends. Thanks for heading on over to robertgovea.com. We got a nice shop that is now there. You can grab some flip-flopping Hillary Clinton sandals, which turned out great. You can grab some flip-flopping Joe Biden sandals, which also have Hunty featured, tucked away back in there for Crackhead Hunter extravaganza. You can grab the Watcher hat, which you can learn about the Watcher symbol. It's a great way to support the show. Thanks for making our new shop a success. I love that people are ordering stuff and wearing it out there. Thanks for being here, my friends, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.